You're listening to The Real Short Box, a comic book podcast made for geeks by geeks.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for coming out and listening to The Real Short Box.
Real Short Box.
Well, that was an addition there, sir. That was a... Where, are you drunk already?
He's just hitting another register so that people who are into lower tones can hear him.
Maybe that's coming in on the left side of the speaker, and I'm on the right. Who knows? But anyway, my name is Donald.
My name is Dr. Kevin.
I'm Darren. So what are we up to tonight, Donald?
We're going to be talking about females in comic book creating. So we're going to be talking about writers, artists, editors, things like that. All the women that are in the comic book world.
And have made many significant contributions.
Yes, exactly. And really helped to flesh out the world of comic books that we now enjoy so much.
That's interesting, and I'm glad you're putting faces to the names here, because oftentimes, you know, as we love to give credit as much as we can to comic book artists, because sometimes people don't know where the Spider-Man comic came from or where the Wonder Woman comic came from, and this is a great opportunity to do it.
Yep.
And I'm going to start off, guys. We have a live caller.
What?
Yes, absolutely. Coming to us from Western Pennsylvania, we actually have a woman who is in the comic book art world. Her name is Stacie Pinsoneault, and her husband, Nathan, have a comic called Mr. Marsh. Stacie, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's see here. I have a couple questions for you. I had a chance to look through this. I must say, I think it was page 17. You had Darren Road, spelled exactly how I spell it, and I'm so thrilled about that.
Is there a connection?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, you're sorry? You're sorry? No, don't be sorry. Like, I'm celebrating this. Are you kidding me?
there was not, but we can pretend there was.
See, Kevin, we just wasted one question there. Way to go, buddy. All right. So I really like the rural backdrops here. I think a lot of people forget that a majority of the land that we live on in this country is basically kind of a pseudo-rural suburban backdrop, and I really liked the feeling from that. I have to ask you, what inspired you to get into comic book art?
Well, it was originally I started out writing comics, and then I met my husband, and I saw his artwork, and I was like, "Hey, do you want to draw my comic?" And
what a pickup line!
Okay, cool. What?
I said, what a pickup line!
Oh, I know, right? It
Yeah.
totally worked. And he was like, "Okay, cool." And then we started dating, and then we really went for it. We were like, let's do this for real. Let's make a comic and put it out in the world. And so I decided, this could be a thing we do. And we started writing together, and then he started drawing, and I said, I'm a big fan of color. Let me study color and figure that part out. And I started doing the colors, and it just kept evolving from there, and I really fell in love with coloring.
Oh, now that's the thing, and I'm going to take you into Mr. Marsh, which is your book out right now. I'll tell you, like, as far as storylines and stuff and everything, it's kind of crazy. So I have to ask you, how did Mr. Marsh come to be the comic you chose to kind of make your big magnum opus?
Well, we wanted to start with something that we knew really well. And my husband had actually had a dream when he was 15 years old of a superhero with a marshmallow head. So we decided to kind of go with that and develop that, and it turned out pretty well, and it worked for sci-fi theme, which is, we're both huge sci-fi nerds, and
Did he have nightmares of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters?
Well, he is a huge Ghostbusters fan, so it probably came from that.
There's the connection right there.
Okay, so I noticed you have a company. You call yourselves 819 Comics. I'm going to take a stab and say it has something to do with an area code, correct?
Well, there is an 819 area code out here in Western Pennsylvania, but it actually comes from our favorite numbers.
Oh.
My husband's favorite number is 8, and my favorite number is 19. And we decided those numbers sound good together, so let's call our company our two favorite numbers.
Is this like some kind of numerology connection? Because some people like have a thing for numbers. Like, well, why is 19 like your favorite number?
I have no idea. It just is. I like odd numbers a lot.
Kevin, isn't it obvious? Sorry, go ahead, Stacie.
And I just, I don't know, I've always felt something like turning 19 years old back in the day was great. Like, that was my favorite year, age-wise.
Okay.
And, I don't know, it's just always been lucky for me.
It's a prime number as well.
Hey, I have a question for you here. I just finished, basically before we started this podcast, I just finished the first issue on reading on this. And I have to tell you that I was intrigued. I want to read more. But one of my big questions in reading this is, was there perhaps any inspiration from you and your husband on in the storytelling and in the art and stuff? Was Jack Kirby in the back of your guys' mind at all when you were doing this?
Very much so.
Okay.
Yes. My husband actually learned to draw by looking at Jack Kirby and reading his comics and everything. So
Okay.
he
Yeah.
introduced me to Jack Kirby.
Nice.
You can't go wrong there.
You can definitely see the influence in his art in the pages and stuff. And the way it's colored just pops like a Kirby book would. So I could definitely tell that there, if I was a betting man, I would have put a lot of money on that influence. So I'm glad we hit the nail on the head there. But it's an intriguing story. Can you tell us a little bit, like a quick little synopsis about what this story is about, so our audience knows? So if they're interested, they can run out and grab it.
Sure. So basically, Mr. Marsh is about a young man who's a farmhand who gets caught in a fire and he disappears. He's presumed dead. His best friend Maddie does not agree. She thinks something happened to him. So when she goes back to investigate, this metal man shows up and he has all of her friend's memories. So it's the journey of this metal man, Mr. Marsh, and the best friend Maddie trying to discover what happened to her friend and if he is somehow transformed into the robot or if it's just his memories that are in him or, what happened to him. And then all these bad guys start coming out trying to chase him and he doesn't know why and he just wants to figure out what happened to him and get back to his body. And so it's their journey of figuring out what happened to him and who these bad guys are and why they want him.
Okay, that's very interesting, actually. I'm glad you shared that because we do have a lot of comic readers that listen to us, and they do frequently ask about these books, that we talk about. Now, I have to say, you pop up in my social media feed from time to time. I see you at a number of local conventions. I have to ask you, what has your experience at conventions been like?
It's been great. We have a lot of fun. We meet a lot of people. It's really nice to just go to a convention and have people be interested, and even if they don't buy the book, just to talk to people is really fun, and you get into these great conversations about movies and comics, and the support is great. All the other artists and everyone, the comics community is a little different in that they don't necessarily see each other as this harsh competition. Like, obviously we are, but everyone just wants to help each other succeed. And it's a really nice community of artists, and we all work together to achieve goals. And,
that's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not often It's not often that you see a lot of people, copying the same types of things. Everybody, when it comes to this kind of art, in comic books, everybody wants to be different. Everybody wants to have their own voice. And so I can see how it would be less of an actual competition in that way, because you just want to get across what you have to say, and how you present that is the most important part.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, Stacie, thank you so much for joining us here. I got to ask, though, what is the best way that our audience can learn more about your work?
Well, we do have our own website. It's 819comics.com. All of our artwork is on there. You can purchase the books. And then we also have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So you can follow us on there and find out what conventions we'll be at. And, the website's probably the best way to get books and everything.
All right, and I'm sure we'll be putting up a post on our Instagram and our Facebook page for you as well, just to let people know in case they forget and they didn't want to replay the podcast or something and try to find this spot on it. We'll have it posted there for them so they can reach out if they're interested.
Well, and thank you for staying up with us this late, and give our best to your husband as well. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. I had a great time.
Thank you so much, Stacie.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Pretty cool, right?
Very insightful.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I do quite, the art is intriguing in this book. It's quite intriguing. In fact, it makes me want to read more, which of course is the goal of all comics.
It is so brightly drawn, like in the colored. It's just it just pops. Like for me, that's what I noticed the most about this is the choice in color. The limeish green color of the mist that creature kind of comes out of. In stark contrast to the almost lavender type word boxes that they put in there. The choices that they made were spot on as far as I'm concerned. My eye would dance from one section to the other. So it was very well done. My hat's off to you guys.
Plus, who doesn't like marshmallows?
Well, it depends what they're being served with. So we have other female artists that we'd like to discuss on the show. There's actually a rich history of female artists in the comic world. And Kevin, would you like to share with us a female comic artist that you find to be particularly interesting?
Well, real quick, one that I didn't even know about, to be honest with you, I feel a little ashamed about this. A cartoonist from the 1930s and 1940s named Jackie Ormez, who, interestingly enough, is from Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm. Really?
Yeah, she's from Pittsburgh.
Ain't that something?
Yeah.
The part with all the hills, or the ugly part?
I think it's the part with the beautiful hills, the pretty hills.
I have a hard time driving in Pittsburgh. But anyway, continue, Kevin.
Everybody has a hard time driving in Pittsburgh. Let's be honest there. There's some streets I took. I helped a friend of mine move once into Pittsburgh, and I had to drive the U-Haul. And good Lord and gravy, just driving through the alleys trying to make my way to her apartment you were gritting your teeth because you were going to scrape something. It was just, it is a small city, really packed in there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jackie Ormez, she created a comic book strip back in 1937 that appeared in the Pittsburgh Courier, and it was called Torchy Brown in Dixie to Harlem. And
Interesting.
Yeah, Torchy Brown was basically a humorous depiction of a Mississippi teen who found fame and fortune singing and dancing at the Cotton Club. Of course, as you know, the Cotton Club was a very famous venture where a lot of artists and especially jazz musicians performed back.
Is this a story about an African American lady?
Yes, I was about to get that. It's an African American artist, African American cartoonist.
Holy shit!
About an African American young lady. Yes,
that's awesome.
Yeah, so like I said, I felt bad that I didn't even know about this, but this is a very interesting. Interesting story.
Wow. I just the small little brief thing you just gave me right there makes me want to go out and try to find it online.
Oh man, if next time we go to one of these big conventions, if I see that, I'm grabbing it.
Well, San Diego's just around the corner, my friend.
That's true.
We'll be there looking.
But really, isn't San Diego always just around the corner? I mean, there's a lot of prep work for this convention.
That's
for
true.
People that attend it as well.
I mean, the prep work when it comes to Comic-Con is ridiculous. You got to prep to get your hotel locked down. You got to prep for the clothes and the costumes. costumes, you name it.
And when you go on trips, always remember underpants, because that's I know that sounds funny, but that's the one thing I always forget is extra underwear. It's embarrassing. Like, it's just embarrassing.
Is this a pickup line for our viewing audience?
Yes. Oftentimes I'm not wearing underpants. There we go.
Donald, do you have a female comic artist you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I want to talk about Marie Severin. She was around in the 1950s. She was the sister of artist John Severin, who was a frequent EC and Atlas Marvel colorist. Later, she drew her own stories as well. So she did some Atlas Marvel coloring and then did some of her own stories. Her cartoon style made her a frequent contributor to Marvel's Not Brand Ek, Satirical's title of the late 1960s, which is pretty awesome. Another prolific artist, if I can throw one out, is Ramona Fradon, who drew Aquaman and was co-creator, which I did not know, guys, and I could slap myself for this one, co-creator of Metamorpho.
You don't say.
Really?
I do say. Yes. Metamorpho being one of the most awesome creations from the 60s.
See, look at that.
Yeah. So there's a lot, if you just dig, that you'll find in this. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go with here. I'm going to go with her name is June Tarp Mills. June Tarp Mills actually was a model in the 1940s. She was doing modeling to actually pay for her education, which was at the Pratt Institute in New York City. And she debuted a character in a series of comic strips named Miss Fury. Now, while these comic strips were rolling, right, Miss Fury, about 6 months after this strip started, Miss Fury became a very popular character in Wonder Woman. And Miss Fury, by the way, is a socialite who uses her sexuality to battle spies, to, solve all sorts of issues in the world. So she's like James Bond. It's a pretty amazing character, in my opinion.
Nice. Very cool. So as far as when we're talking about notable women in comic books, there's a lot to go over. Surprisingly, a lot more than what I would imagine a lot of people think. Like, for instance, you talk to somebody in the comic book world and you ask them, who their favorite female artist or female writer is. You'd be surprised how many people don't really have an answer. Like, they're not sure. Let's be real, that comic books is a very male-dominated industry.
Yeah, and it's very coincidental, in my opinion. I don't think anyone's trying to keep women out, per se. I just think a lot of this is, I know when I read a comic book and I see an artist, I normally don't search out their face. Like, I don't know what these people look like.
That's going to take me to Devin K. Grayson.
Oh, interesting.
Wrote on Gotham Knights, Titans.
Oh, wow.
Nightwing, things like that. Devin K. Grayson, I thought, was a man. I did. I was like, oh, Devin K. Grayson. Oh, yeah. Great Nightwing writer. Also a female. so that one, I was like, okay, all right. I'm not paying attention. And I think that's good for them, but it's also interesting that when you look at the movement of women in comics, there's also a huge swell of underground comics with notable women that. There was a female comic book series. It was called Tits and Clits. It was founded by Lynn Chevelli and Joyce Farmer, who were inspired by the honesty in the underground comics, but appalled by the frequent macho attitude. So they liked the idea of underground comics, but there was so much masculinity pumped into there. Because let's be honest, you get some teenage guys or some early 20s guys that the stories they want to tell are a little off the wall. They can't do it for DC. They can't do it for Marvel. Maybe not. Image was around at that time, or Eclipse or Pacific wasn't taking that kind of work. So they could basically say whatever they wanted. They had pent up aggression. Maybe they went out on a date and they were rejected. So they write this story about how this woman was a bitch or something, you know? So these ladies saw this kind of stuff in the underground comic world, and they were a little bit pulled back by that, you know, they had to take a step back and be like, you know, we need to pump some femininity into here, and not just, you know, we're talking, you know, purses and lipstick and all that kind of nonsense. We're talking about, you know, equality, what women are really thinking, what they want in life, that kind of stuff. Hell, if a woman's horny, what is she thinking about? That kind of stuff you would get in these types of underground comics.
So different perspectives.
Exactly.
Something very substantive too, you know, because I think it's very easy to pitfall and stereotype people into they like certain things or they're interested in certain things. And also too, society changes a lot. I remember growing up, the kids who read comic books were often viewed as like the unpopular kid, the dorky kid, the geeky kid. And now it's completely mainstream. And it almost feels like if you don't get into these, you're kind of in the minority.
Which is kind of weird and ironic.
Yeah, society does change, guys. I mean, I don't know if it evolves for the better or the worse. I don't want to get into that, but it does change. And I think it's interesting to have female artists like that want to maybe be a part of explaining to you how that is changing.
Now, in 1993, we have Karen Berger. Now, I don't know if you guys know that name, but she was given her own imprint to manage, which was eventually called Vertigo.
Oh, man,
Yes.
really?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
She was very instrumental in getting Vertigo off the ground, I believe.
And very instrumental in some of these titles, like, for instance, Sandman.
Ooh.
How big is that? The Sandman. You know what I mean? Like that, God, some of the work, you know, American Virgin, Why the Last Man, Air, Madame Xanadu, you know, stuff like that. All these titles that came out of Vertigo.
Mature titles.
John Constantine titles. You know, all this stuff that brought a new level to the art form of comic books.
The art of writing.
Yes, could be put on the back of someone like Karen Berger. So, you know, and if it's Berger, I apologize, but I believe it's pronounced Berger.
Now, I want to ask you guys something. I asked you earlier in the day. We actually do keep in contact, guys, and prepare for the show, if you can believe it. I asked you earlier in the day if you felt as though you're aware that you're reading something that's written by a man versus a woman, not in terms of like, do you know the name of the artist, but is there a particular way of storytelling that maybe jumps out to you as you're reading it, or is it very subtle and just like skates right by you?
You know, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
You know, maybe occasionally I could probably pick it up if it's written by a man or by a woman, because there could be certain nuances. You could say, well, you know what, this has to be a woman writing this, because I don't know how a man can relate so, you know, in detail what this character is going through. So, or even vice versa with a man, you know, only a man would usually know exactly what this feels like. So every once in a while, but for the most part, if you, you know, took away the names, just told me to read something, yeah, I probably wouldn't know.
Don?
I would say, for me, it's going to be pretty similar, as far as when you're talking about a woman writing a book, a comic book. A lot of times I don't notice. Gail Simone, for instance. Gail Simone's a hell of a writer. If you haven't read her Secret Six run or her Suicide Squad run, seek it out. It's phenomenal.
Trade paperback.
Yeah, she's just very prolific. She's probably the top, if not definitely in the top 5 women comic book writers of all time. She was the first that pointed out the woman in the refrigerator movement.
You talking about Kyle Rayner's ex-girlfriend?
That was founded in 1999. Yeah, it had to do with, and I believe we talked about this prior. It had to do with the fact that Kyle Rayner, who was the Green Lantern, the new Green Lantern in the 90s, his girlfriend was killed and unceremoniously stuffed in a refrigerator. Mm-hmm. She was used as the linchpin to create no huge catalyst in the story, I mean, he was still going to be Green Lantern.
He was traumatized.
Right. It was just something to show that Major Force, who was the character that did this atrocity, that he was such a badass that he killed his girlfriend and stuffed her in a refrigerator. So anything else he could have done, those ideas were kind of just like, oh, that doesn't, that doesn't matter. And I believe it was Ron Mars, if I'm correct, that wrote that. And Simone was not happy about that idea of that being a way to just make another male character look more menacing by
disposing of a woman like that.
Disposing of a woman, yeah, in such an unceremonious manner. So for me, it just depends on, like Kevin's saying, it just depends on the storyline itself and what we're talking about. With Gail Simone, it didn't matter so much to me. I didn't pay that much attention because her stories were just so good, in the way she told them. Now, if you're looking at, something else, if you're looking at a more independent comic, something written from Image, perhaps you're looking at something like Bitch Planet, well, that's going to have more of a female perspective, and you're going to know...
You'll pick up on it.
Yeah, you're going to pick up on the nuances of those types of stories. So it just depends on the work.
Yeah, definitely comes with a point of view. And to all you single ladies out there who are looking for some really outstanding men who also are into comics, I think there's a really great shop they can go to.
Oh, sorry to interrupt, everyone. Just wanted to mention real quick about a shop in Canoga Park, California called Spiro's Heroes. Elliot, the proprietor of the store, has over 300,000 books in what's called the Temple of Comics. That's Spiro Heroes in Canoga Park, spirosheroes.com. All right, wow. I remember when I first met my wife there at Spiro's.
Tell us all about it, sir.
By the way, was it in the independent comic room or the DC room?
No, of course it was in the independent section.
I see.
Just don't make your story as long as The Notebook, which, by the way, was directed by a man. So, I can say that. Nick Cassavetes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, from the famous Cassavetes family.
Yeah, absolutely.
I watched it once. It was okay.
You didn't cry?
I don't know.
You don't remember if you cried or not?
I don't remember the story that well. I think, what's his face? Jim Garner? Or
James Garner.
James Garner, yeah, he was in there.
And Sally Kirkland, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and then the younger ones were McAdams and Gosling. And I never saw the film, Kevin, but I imagine if I had a heart, I might cry.
Only if you did, sir.
It's kind of like Waterworld, only not at all. I know you're a fan, Darren. You can relate.
I love the leather-clad costumes, especially the faded leather-clad costumes.
It's the gills that do it for me.
You're down with the gills? Do you remember when he went fishing and he killed that big whale? He got in its belly and shot a spear out either side?
I don't remember that.
Okay.
That sounds like Pinocchio. Did that happen in Pinocchio? His nose, he just kept making lies until his nose pierced the whale. And they were able to get out. Isn't that how that worked?
That'd be great, because I want to hear some of those lies. So you just do non-stop lies. So you'd be sitting there like, oh, the sky is green.
Speaking of which, I did get to go on the Pinocchio ride at Disneyland for the first time here just last month.
How much fun did you have?
That's great. It only opened, 80 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a bit. I will say, talking about women, every woman I've ever met in the history of women love Mr. Toad's Wild Ride.
Really?
Why
That's
is
like
that?
in their top 5, if not their top 2.
Why is that?
Rides of all time at Disneyland. I don't understand it. I'm trying to, much like women in general. I'm trying to understand, but I just don't oftentimes.
It's part of the great mysteries.
From what I was told is just, it's so cool because he does something really wrong, goes to hell, and then just gets away with it.
Yeah, Disney gets a little dark, and I'm going to risk alienating some of our audience right now, but I'm going to call you flat out insane if you enjoy the Finding Nemo submarine ride. That thing's like 20 minutes long. And you know what? It was one of the first rides we went to right before the lines came up, so I will never forgive that ride. That's 20 minutes of value that could have went on something else.
What about the Small, Small World? That's kind of a creepy ride.
It's creepy, but it's a classic. I kind of have to concede on
those dolls, those creepy looking eyes.
If I can avoid it, I will. But I mean, I will say in the summertime, it is cooling because you go inside and it's, it's much cooler in there and you're, surrounded by water and stuff. And that's kind of cool to get on a water ride where you're not completely drenched like on that log ride one. That's basically they can't call it the Song of the South ride, but it's basically the Song of the South.
It is the Song of the South ride. So back to females. This is all related, by the way. Okay, like I mean, women go to Disney World with me, Disneyland all the time, especially the one woman I know.
Right.
So,
That's true.
So back to these artists here. I find that this, especially from even doing this podcast and hearing everything out loud, I like how the comic book community is rather inclusive in the sense that, I mean, just if you have a great idea, you have an opportunity, just to write your ideas, put it out in the world.
And be heard.
You know what? I mean, it's just like, because you don't have to be an athlete that runs a 4.3 flat 40 to be a great comic book writer.
Which you used to be able to do 20 years ago, sir, from what I hear.
It was a 4.2, actually.
Oh, okay, very
Yeah,
impressive.
4.2 flat.
Very impressive.
By the way, have you seen that Matthew Bowling kid on YouTube?
No,
The
I
sprinter? Oh my God, we'll talk later. But the thing is that I really like this kind of thing, and it's, I don't know, maybe it's just something that just goes over my head, but I just realized tonight in talking to you, I never seek out the faces of these artists. I'm just like, well, of course, the name,
because
that's it.
you're so absorbed into the story and into the artwork. Yeah, you're not necessarily trying to match a face to a name, unless you really just, become just like that's your favorite artist. Then you might want to seek him out. But generally speaking, yeah, you're not doing that.
No, one of these artists could actually be, the so-called late Jim Morrison, and I wouldn't even know it. No, not a clue. So, Dawn, do you have anything else with the history of women here in comics, or someone that just jumps out at you?
We've got so much. I want to spotlight here Louise Simonson.
A great artist and writer from the 80s.
Well, she's an American comic book writer, of course, and editor. Best known for her work on comic book titles such as Power Pack, X Factor, New Mutants, Superman the Man of Steel, and Steel.
Steel with Shaquille O'Neal?
Here's a cool little tidbit. In 1964, while attending Georgia State College, she met fellow student Jeff Jones. That's Jeff Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Two began dating, were married in 1966. Their daughter, Juliana, was born the following year. After graduation, they moved to New York. Louise, I had no idea. Louise modeled for artist Bernie Wrightson's cover of DC Comics' House of Secrets number 92. Did anybody here at this table know that?
No,
I didn't.
of course not.
That
Wow.
person on the cover, that's Louise Simonson. That's amazing to me.
That's incredible.
Yeah. That's the first appearance, for those that don't know, that's the first appearance of Swamp Thing. It's got this blonde lady and she's in this house, and there's like a window in the background, I believe.
Iconic cover.
And there's lightning or something in the back, and it's dark, and then it's highlighting this swamp monster in the back. So it's the first appearance of Swamp Thing itself.
She also co-created one of my favorite Marvel villains, Apocalypse.
Oh, yeah, that's true. In 74, that's when she started her professional comic book career at Warren Publishing, back when Warren was in existence. She was an assistant editor of a comics line, Creepy, Eerie, and Vampirilla, before leaving the company in 1979, where she then joined Marvel Comics in 1980, where she started out as an editor for Uncanny X-Men. She edited that for about 4 years, and then another spinoff, New Mutants, of course. After leaving the series, she would have a cameo in New Mutants number 21, drawn in as a slumber party guest by Bill, I never get his name right.
Sikowitz?
Sinekowitz, yes.
Not Andy Sipkowitz from NYPD Blue. That would be too much.
Mm-hmm. In 1983, she quit her editing job at Marvel to try her hand at full-time writing, as her name, Louise Simonson. She created the Eagle Award-winning Power Pack. For those that don't know, she's the creator of Power Pack, which, rumors have it, might be coming down the pike for either the Disney streaming service
That make more
or
sense.
a future movie. For those that are prospecting, finding the first appearance of Power Pack is very easy and very cheap currently. Do it while you can.
Yes.
Before it's too late.
Yes. But she went on to a very illustrious career in comic book writing. Moved over to DC. Her and artist John Bogdavani, Mike Carlin, they launched a new Superman title, Superman the Man of Steel.
Oh, wow.
Which was instrumental in the storytelling for the death of Superman that happened, because that was part of the 4 titles that Superman crossed over into, plus Justice League, so 5, I guess, in total, and then one shots and things like that. So she had a very prolific career in DC as well as Marvel, and beyond that.
My parents bought 8 copies of the Superman Dies issue when it was released.
They thought that was going to somehow finance your college career?
Well, it was a big thing. I mean, in my town, we had it on the local news, and they had advertised it for about a week. So anyone who was at Rainbow Comics, may it rest in peace, over there purchasing Superman Dies.
Multiple copies.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I remember that was the biggest thing in television news for a day. I mean, actually for a while, especially the town of Metropolis, and I think it's either Indiana or Illinois, I can't remember which, small town in the southern tip, if I recall. They rallied to the fact that Superman was dead and was like, no, bring him back, and people were wearing capes in the town and running around and stuff, and I believe they even erected a statue of Superman in that town.
Wow.
To, give tribute to the character. But, he was created in what, 1938?
Yes, sir. 1938.
1938. He'd been around, and they just unceremoniously killed him off. He went out like a champ, don't get me wrong, but it was really sad, and it was also sad because it was probably the most memorable story that Dan Jurgens ever told, and possibly will ever be known for.
Yeah.
Even though he still writes to this day. And honestly, when he came back to the Superman title a few years ago, it was pretty good. He was doing well.
In my mind, DC wimped out and dropped the value of my book tremendously.
Oh, don't blame DC. Blame the speculators.
Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plenty of blame to go around. That's the best way I get over things. I just blame somebody else
It's
for 'em.
the comic book bubble. It happens. It'll burst every so often. But anything else we want to mention real quick before we end this part?
I think you summed it up wonderfully for us. I'm good, Kevin.
I'm fine.
You have a great snack there, fudge stripe minis. I don't know if that'll get us off YouTube because we mentioned that. Those look really good. May I have one?
Sure.
Okay, not now. Just after the show.
Okay.
Yeah, fudge stripe minis. Are you going to share those with everybody?
Of course.
Okay.
Even with your cat.
Because sometimes Kevin doesn't share cookies.
That's not true. I share with the cat.
I don't have a cat. I keep telling you that. That's my neighbor.
Oh.
That big fat gray butterball fluff, that is my neighbor's cat.
Oh.
Now, Donald, I'm going to imbue upon you. This is kind of putting you on the spot. Would you do us a favor and explain to our audience every single platform you can think of off the top of the head that we are now on? We have exciting movements right now.
Good Lord. Yeah, we've moved up in the world. Not only, besides the usuals as far as YouTube and iTunes, and being available for link through on, Facebook, Instagram, stuff like that. We are also available on Google Play. We are also available now on Spotify.
Spotify. Now that's moving up in the world.
Yes, we're available on Spreaker. And TuneIn Radio, I think was the other one, and 3 or 4 different other podcast sites. Odds are, if you go to Google a podcast site, or if you have a podcast application on your phone, you'll be able to find the Real Short Box by typing us in and just doing a search.
So everybody from Topeka, Kansas to Reykjavik, Iceland can now find us.
As they should. Even Antarctica. Now
add us into your Spotify playlist. You won't regret it.
Yeah, guys. And once again, we'd like to thank Stacie for coming and joining us here today. My name is Darren.
My name is Kevin.
And my name is Donald. And thank you for coming out and listening to the Real Short Box. And we'll see you
at the comic shop.
This has been The Real Short Box. We'll see you at the comic shop. Thanks for listening.